Why would a student kill their teacher? Examining the case of Colleen Ritzer. On the chilly evening of October 22nd, 2013, Diana Chisholm faced every parent's nightmare when she felt compelled to contact the Danvers Police Department. Her son, 14-year-old Philip Chisholm, had not returned from Danvers High School where he was a student. Diana, who had recently relocated with Philip from Tennessee, was particularly distressed because this disappearance was out of character for her son. She pleaded for swift action. The local police department responded with urgency, understanding the critical nature of the first few hours in a missing persons case. They disseminated Philip's photo and a detailed description of his physical attributes across various social media platforms to leverage the community's help in locating him. The announcement described Philip's height and weight and asked the public to report any sightings. Furthermore, the community of Danvers was alerted through a reverse 911 call that broadcasted details of Philip's disappearance directly to their phones. This system provided residents with essential information and urged them to keep an eye out for the young boy. Meanwhile, another family was experiencing a similar distress. Colleen Ritzer, a 24-year-old math teacher at the same high school, had also not returned home. Known for her punctuality and strict adherence to her daily routine, her absence alarmed her parents. Colleen was admired for her commitment to education and her genuine care for her students, making her disappearance all the more worrying. As the night deepened, Officer Neil Hovey of the Danvers Police was patrolling a secluded area along Old Route 1 north of the town. The area was poorly lit and known for its safety issues, particularly at night. It was here, on a narrow bridge shadowed by darkness, that Officer Hovey spotted a lone figure. At exactly 12:28 a.m., Officer Hovey pulled over, stepping out into the cool night air. He approached a young man dressed in shorts, a zip-up sweatshirt, black socks, and sneakers, Philip Chisholm, the boy's backpack slung carelessly over his shoulder as he stood in the dim light. Officer Hovey, an experienced law enforcer, immediately sensed that something was amiss in Philip's demeanor and appearance. Officer Hovey's initial concern grew as he observed Philip alone in a dangerous area late at night. Dressed in shorts despite the brisk, damp weather, Philip seemed oddly out of touch with his surroundings, looking past the officer as if he wasn't there. When questioned about his residence, Philip's response was disheartening. He claimed he had no home and had been wandering for days. However, his neat appearance contradicted the story of prolonged exposure to the elements. During their conversation, Officer Hovey decided to conduct a safety frisk, finding it necessary given the unusual circumstances. As he patted Philip down, he detected plastic objects in his pocket. He asked Philip to empty his pockets, which revealed a driver's license, an insurance card, and a credit card, none of which bore his name. They were all registered to Colleen Ritzer. Officer Hovey's suspicion intensified as Philip claimed to have found these items at a grocery store. Pressed for more details, Philip faltered, unable to specify where or when he found them. Back at the station, Officer Hovey examined Philip's backpack more thoroughly, discovering even more alarming items. A woman's purse and female underwear, both out of place in the teenager's possession. Digging deeper into the backpack, Officer Hovey found a box cutter smeared with a reddish-brown substance that he recognized as blood. The discovery escalated the situation, prompting him to ask Philip directly whose blood it was. Philip's chilling response that it belonged to the girl compelled Officer Hovey to momentarily step out and urgently contact the Danvers Police Department. In his absence, another officer continued the interrogation. He inquired about the girl's whereabouts, to which Philip responded that she was buried in the woods. When asked if there was any way to help her, the alarming sight of brown-red stains on Philip's sweatshirt sleeves, coupled with a ski mask loosely draped around his neck, prompted the officers at the scene to take immediate action. They decided to confiscate Philip's clothing and footwear as potential evidence. Meanwhile, with the urgency of locating Colleen Ritzer growing, Officer Steve Baldessari was dispatched to Danvers High School to conduct a thorough search and review any available evidence. Upon arriving at the high school, Officer Baldessari coordinated with the security team to access the school's CCTV footage, hoping it would shed light on Colleen's movements after her classes ended. While waiting for the video, he conferred with other officers on the scene to exchange updates and collate information gathered so far. Their search efforts at the school yielded several disturbing findings. Near a running trail adjacent to the student parking lot, they discovered Colleen's handbag, shoes, and some clothing scattered near a recycling bin. Closer inspection of the area around a brush path revealed more of Colleen's personal belongings, which appeared hastily discarded. The situation grew more dire when officers examining the recycling bin found traces of what seemed to be blood. Further alarming discoveries were made inside the school. Blood traces were found in the second-floor women's bathroom, alarmingly close to Colleen's classroom, deepening the officers' concerns about her welfare. CCTV footage reviewed by Officer Baldessari showed a young male, identifiable as Philip Chisholm from earlier social media posts regarding his disappearance, following Colleen out of her classroom at around 2:30 p.m. The footage captured Philip and Colleen entering the second-floor women's bathroom shortly after. Moments later, Philip exited the bathroom alone, noticeably changed in appearance and donning a mask, suggesting an attempt to conceal his identity. The timeline constructed from the footage further revealed Philip's movements post-incident. At approximately 3:16 p.m., he was seen returning to the same bathroom, this time dragging a recycling bin behind him, adding a chilling layer of context to the earlier found evidence. Following Philip's departure from the women's bathroom with the recycling bin, he maneuvered it outside the school premises, moving out of the surveillance camera's range. Eerily, the footage confirmed that Colleen Ritzer did not exit the bathroom after Philip. Upon confirmation that Philip Chisholm was in police custody and safe, the Massachusetts State Police assumed responsibility for the teenager, transitioning him to their care for further investigation into Colleen Ritzer's disappearance. Philip was subsequently taken to the Danvers Police Department to be interrogated. Concurrently, a crime scene investigation unit from the Massachusetts State Police was dispatched to Danvers High School to examine the area around the location where the blood-stained recycling bin had been found. As the investigation intensified, Diana Chisholm, Philip's mother, arrived at the station. During her interview, she raised concerns about Philip's mental stability, mentioning the recent stress from her separation with her husband and a family history of mental health issues which she feared might have influenced her son's actions. Around 2 a.m., Philip and Diana Chisholm were led into an interrogation room at the police station by Trooper Buckery and Sergeant Philip Tansey. Before the formal questioning commenced, Philip and his mother were allowed a brief 10-minute private conversation. Outside the room, Trooper Buckery and Sergeant Tansey prepared to interrogate Philip, while officers on the other side of the wall listened in, armed with insights from the CCTV footage that had captured Philip trailing Colleen into the women's bathroom, a place she was last seen entering but never exiting. Simultaneously, as the interrogation unfolded, the Massachusetts State Police's Air Wing and Danvers Fire Department deployed their resources at the school. They utilized infrared technology to scour the vicinity for any trace of Colleen. In a somber moment of the investigation, Philip Chisholm disclosed to the officers that he had used a karate chop to subdue Colleen Ritzer before fatally wounding her neck with a box cutter. His confession was detailed and disturbing, as he also pointed out on a map the secluded location in the woods behind the school where he had left Colleen's body. The grim reality of his confession was confirmed around 3 a.m. when a forensic scientist made a chilling discovery in a remote, shadowy section of the woods. A toe with pink nail polish barely visible under a thin layer of leaves marked the beginning of a horrifying scene. The scientist urgently summoned paramedics to the area. Upon arrival, the paramedics engaged in a meticulous search through the leaves and soil, which led them to uncover the lifeless body of Colleen Ritzer. Despite their swift response, it was clear that Colleen had been deceased for some time. Her body was respectfully transported to the medical examiner's office where an autopsy would be conducted. Dr. Anna McDonald, a seasoned forensic pathologist, conducted the examination and made several critical findings. Notably, male DNA was discovered on Colleen's body, which matched Philip Chisholm's profile. Dr. McDonald also noted petechiae, tiny hemorrhages, in Colleen's eyes and around her mouth, suggesting she had been asphyxiated. Further analysis of the Philip was charged with aggravated sexual assault and murder. Despite his young age, the severity of the crime led to him being tried as an adult, a decision that ignited a heated debate about how the criminal justice system should handle young offenders. While some argued that his age should not diminish the seriousness of his charges, others contended that his youth was an important consideration, highlighting the broader issue of juvenile justice. Colleen Ritzer's students were left heartbroken by the loss of a teacher who had shown unwavering dedication and kindness in her role. Colleen was remembered for her commitment to their success and her compassionate approach to teaching. making her death a profound loss to the entire community. In response to the tragedy, the town of Danvers united in grief and remembrance. Candlelight vigils were organized, and the Boston Red Sox held a moment of silence before the opening game of the World Series, honoring Colleen's memory and the impact she had on her community and beyond. These gestures reflected the collective mourning and the high regard in which she was held. Speculation about the motives behind Philip's violent actions was rife. According to a report by the New York Post, it was rumored that Philip was infatuated with Colleen Ritzer and had become unhinged when she rejected his advances. This narrative was supported by a police source, quoted by the Daily Mail, who suggested that Philip's affection for Colleen and a misinterpretation of her friendly demeanor might have led him to make an inappropriate advance. Further insights into Philip's behavior came from a local news source, Wicked Local Danvers, where a classmate described him as antisocial and often appearing exhausted and detached. This observation was echoed by other students who noted Philip's frequent withdrawal and disengagement, adding layers of complexity to his profile and the tragic events that unfolded. The community continued to grapple with the dual realities of mourning a cherished teacher and making sense of the circumstances that led a young student to commit such a heinous act. The discussions around Philip's mental state, his motivations, and the appropriate response from the criminal justice system highlighted the broader societal challenges of addressing such profound tragedies. The depths of darkness within Philip Chisholm were unimaginable, and as he awaited trial, a significant development unfolded. A judge decided to exclude Philip's confession from the trial, citing violations related to his Miranda rights and the absence of an attorney during his questioning. Philip's defense attorneys argued that after his arrest around 12:30 a.m. on October 23rd, he was detained for over 3 hours, handcuffed for most of that time, and was neither allowed to make a phone call nor provided food despite his requests. The judge, in a detailed 48-page ruling, noted that it was clear Philip's mother had wanted an attorney present during his questioning. Despite Philip initially waiving his rights, the judge determined that it could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he had knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily waived his Miranda rights. This decision impacted the evidence permissible in court. For instance, cell phones belonging to Philip and Colleen, which were obtained based on statements, were ruled inadmissible. However, not all evidence was excluded. Other key evidence, such as the contents of Philip's pockets and the bloody box cutter, were allowed in the trial. In December 2015, the trial for Colleen Ritzer's murder began. Essex County Assistant District Attorney Kate McDougal presented a compelling case against Philip, portraying him as methodical and unwavering in executing his gruesome plan, arguing that his actions were calculated and deliberate. On the other side, Philip's defense attorney Denise Reagan painted a different picture. She contended that Philip was experiencing psychosis at the time of the murder, suggesting his mental state was a significant factor in his actions. Reagan emphasized that there was no other plausible reason for Philip's heinous acts other than his compromised mental health. During the trial, the defense called Dr. Anthony Jackson, a forensic psychiatrist, to testify about Philip's mental state. Dr. Jackson indicated that Philip showed signs of improvement after being administered an antipsychotic medication, bolstering the defense's argument about his mental health challenges. This testimony aimed to provide insight into Philip's psychological condition both before and after the crime, underlining the defense's argument of his diminished capacity during the murder. During the trial, Dr. Anthony Jackson provided testimony that suggested an improvement in Philip Chisholm's mental state following medication. He noted that Philip's hallucinations and delusions had diminished, making him more alert and oriented. This improvement led to suggestions that Philip's actions during the murder were significantly influenced by his compromised mental state at that time. In contrast, another expert witness, Dr. Richard Dudley, a psychiatrist specializing in forensic evaluations, presented observations based on his encounters with Philip. Dr. Dudley, who had met with Philip 7 times while he awaited trial, testified that Philip was plagued by auditory hallucinations and delusions at the time of the murder, believing he was being instructed by voices, including one claiming to be a ninja, to perform certain actions. These voices, he argued, were integral to understanding Philip's decision-making process. Dr. Dudley further testified that Philip had shown signs of schizophrenia from a young age, with his condition worsening significantly in the period leading up to the murder. Schizophrenia, a chronic. To provide a deeper understanding of the crime, The judge and jury visited Danvers High School, the scene of the tragic events. This visit allowed them to physically see where Colleen Ritzer was attacked and where her life was taken. For many, being at the actual location was a harrowing experience that brought the brutal reality of the crime into sharper focus. During the trial, in an attempt to influence the jury's perception, the defense introduced testimony from Philip Chisholm's maternal grandfather, Eduardo Barbie. Eduardo revealed that mental health issues were prevalent in their family, noting that Philip's grandmother had suffered a severe mental breakdown in the mid-1970s, treated at the time with electroconvulsive therapy. He also shared that several of Philip's aunts had experienced similar challenges and had been institutionalized. Further testimony to support the defense's argument of Philip's deteriorating mental state came from a high school classmate. The classmate observed a drastic change in Philip's behavior prior to the murder. He had transitioned from being lively and sociable to withdrawn and subdued, a shift that had raised concern among his peers. Despite these efforts by the defense, the jury convicted Philip Chisholm of Colleen Ritzer's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. During sentencing, the judge described the murder as brutal and senseless, underscoring the cruel nature of the crime and the profound loss inflicted upon the Ritzer family and the community. The narrative of Philip Chisholm did not end with this sentence, as he continued to make headlines. In 2004, at the age of 25, Philip pleaded guilty to additional serious charges, including attempted murder, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, and kidnapping. These charges stemmed from an incident in June 2014 involving a Massachusetts Department of Youth Services employee who accused him of a violent assault that mirrored the attack on Colleen Ritzer. The Department of Youth Services employee reported that Philip had followed her into a bathroom, cornered her against the wall, and attempted to strangle her while assaulting her with a pencil. This incident echoed the tragic violence of the previous year and highlighted ongoing concerns about Philip's behavior and the adequacy of the systems in place to manage his incarceration and rehabilitation. The alarming details of Philip Chisholm's subsequent attack only reinforced the perception of him as a dangerously violent individual with a stark disregard for human life. After admitting guilt in this second attack, Philip received an additional sentence of 17 to 20 years, compounding his existing life sentence. During the court proceedings, the victim of Philip's assault, a youth service worker, shared her traumatic experiences through a letter, vividly describing the persistent fear that haunted her daily life and prevented her from even leaving her bedroom. This testament added a grim reminder of the terror Philip inflicted. Meanwhile, Philip sought to challenge his convictions, pushing for an appeal to the highest court in Massachusetts. His attorney, Michael Schneider, acknowledged Philip's involvement in the murder of Colleen Ritzer, but challenged the handling of his insanity defense. Schneider argued that the evidence used to convict Philip was legally insufficient and criticized the trial judge's decision to exclude expert testimony regarding brain scans that could have supported claims of Philip's mental illness. Central to Philip's appeal was the contention that these brain scans demonstrated his mental illness, which, if considered, might have influenced the jury's understanding of his mental state at the time of the crime. By excluding this evidence, Schneider contended that the jury was deprived of a full grasp of Philip's psychological condition, potentially the mere possibility of Philip Chisholm becoming eligible for parole, if resentenced, is something Colleen Ritzer's family finds utterly inconceivable. They argue that neither Colleen nor her family were given a second chance, and the thought of potentially reducing the sentence of her convicted killer is unbearable for them. The idea that justice might not be fully served weighs heavily on their minds, reinforcing their belief that the original guilty verdict and the maximum sentence imposed were entirely justified. For Colleen's loved ones, any discussion of a lesser sentence for the perpetrator is a painful reminder of the profound loss they continue to endure. They firmly believe that allowing any possibility of parole would undermine the severity of the crime and the suffering it has caused. Following Colleen's tragic murder, a wave of fear and anxiety swept through the teaching community nationwide. The realization that a teacher could be targeted and killed by a student shattered their sense of security, prompting educators to reassess their safety measures. Teachers who once felt safe within the school environment were now compelled to implement additional precautions to protect themselves and their students. In the wake of this tragedy, schools across the United States took significant steps to enhance security protocols, increased video surveillance, improved lockdown procedures, and stricter access controls became more commonplace. Additionally, Many schools hired trained security personnel and conducted regular safety drills to better prepare for potential emergencies. These efforts were aimed at creating a safer educational environment and reducing the likelihood of similar incidents occurring in the future. The murder also heightened educators' vigilance concerning student behaviors that may indicate potential risks. Teachers became more cautious in their interactions, more observant of their surroundings, and more proactive in seeking support from school authorities when they sensed potential threats. This heightened awareness was not just about preventing violence, but also about ensuring the overall safety of everyone on school grounds. Furthermore, the incident raised specific concerns about the vulnerability of teachers during one-on-one interactions with students. In response, many educational institutions began offering training to help teachers de-escalate potential. To bolster teacher safety during private meetings with students, schools provided guidelines on protective measures and strategies to maintain a safe teaching environment. These initiatives underscored a collective effort to safeguard educators from harm while fostering a climate of security and trust within the school community.